Well, hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Well, a few of you have asked me to weigh in on my opinion about the new Harley Davidson liquid-cooled Nightster that they just announced a few days ago. So I'll let you know my impressions. I actually went to my local Harley dealer to see if it was there, but it's about a month off from showing up at your dealership. So let's get to it. So a couple things. Apparently the rated horsepower is 90 according to the Harley website with 70 foot-pounds of torque, but only weighs about 475 pounds wet, which is really an accomplishment. Now it's only about 25-30 pounds lighter in weight compared to a Sportster S, but I think that's a huge accomplishment. It's going to have about 20 horsepower more plus than a comparable air-cooled Sportster at even 1200 cc's. So big weight savings, big jump in horsepower. The thing I'm curious with Harley is, you know, for years people said they need to modernize, they need to become more high-tech. Well, this is what that looks like. At the same time, they're increasingly distancing themselves from what a traditional Harley is. I actually think that's okay. The other interesting thing to me is that this bike doesn't really lend itself to any direct comparison to any other Harley or to a comparable bike from another manufacturer. And I say comparable, there really aren't any, but there's several liquid-cooled offerings out there, obviously from Indian, from Triumph, from Honda. I did a past video about various bobber offerings, and you see a lot of variation in terms of horsepower, displacement, comfort, but the common theme we're seeing now is more liquid-cooled bikes in, say, the 900 to 1200 cc range, anywhere from, say, 80 to 100 horsepower, excluding the Sportster S, because that's about 120 horsepower. The Nightster comes in around 13,500 for the base model, so it's not what I would call an entry-level motorcycle by any stretch, particularly at 90 horsepower. But you know, it's got the low seat height. I've got a 2020 Roadster, and I think they've done a great job in preserving the traditional looks, yet with a modern liquid-cooled engine. So I have to say, as with many Harley motorcycles, I actually really like it. I think I'd like it even more if I test rode one. I had to admit, my first thought though was, why didn't they put the 1250 liquid-cooled engine in there, the Revolution Max? But the more I looked at the specs and tried to compare to other makes of motorcycles and maybe so-called competing models, I realized they've really hit the sweet spot here, I believe. It's a classically styled cruiser motorcycle with a decent amount of horsepower and a modern engine. I think that should spell success. Hopefully you'll be able to actually get one without too much difficulty, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that, you know, with the dealer surcharges, the Harley surcharges and all that stuff. But I think all that may settle down here maybe in the next year, not this year. But if you're looking to get a bike like this anyway, this might be a good fit. I think it would blow the side covers off even the bigger Scout. I mean, the Scout has 100 horsepower, but weighs 100 pounds more than this bike. So on paper anyway, this Nightster ought to be a quicker bike. I really do like the Indian Scouts. The knock on those is they may not be that comfortable for taller riders. I think the Nightster might be a little more comfortable for a taller rider, but again, I haven't sat on one or certainly haven't ridden one yet. Haven't seen one in the flesh, so we'll see what happens. You know, I didn't watch any other creator content about this bike. I only looked at the Harley website. So these are my own impressions. I have no idea what other people are saying about this bike. Well, my son back there, I got two of my boys riding back there. He had an interesting observation. The one that's riding the MT-03, the one that's 14 back there. He thought that the reason why Harley came out with the bigger 1250 engine in the Sportster S was the radical style and everything was just such an obvious departure from a traditional Sportster that the core audience wouldn't revolt. Now they've slipped in a liquid-cooled engine into a traditionally styled Sportster, which they wouldn't have dared done as their first offering. So I think that's an interesting observation. And that possibly they'll eventually kill off the Sportster S, but we'll see. I mean, I think the other thing is the Sportster S kind of filled a niche with the FXDR, and also had the similar styling to the newer Fat Bob. So we'll see what happens, but I think that's an interesting idea. It is interesting too that they were gonna bring out the 975 liquid-cooled Revolution Max engine in a naked style bike, which was going to be called the Bronx, and they killed that one a few years ago. So they saved that whole engine platform and the smaller displacement for this version of the Sportster. But like I was saying, this new bike really doesn't compare directly to anything. In terms of horsepower, it compares most closely to 1100 Rebel. But I think they really killed the styling on the Rebel with that hideous exhaust. Of course, I think the exhaust is pretty hideous looking on the Sportster S, to be honest with you, but I know some people like it. But the Sportster S certainly was fun to ride, though. Pretty quick. So, I don't know, I just went into this evaluation completely open-minded, and I was surprised at how much I'm really digging the looks of this thing. And you know, it's still kind of expensive, but again, what are you comparing it to? I think if they had put a 1250 in it, it'd be a pure power cruiser, and it'd still be a lot cheaper than, say, an X Diavel S, but the X Diavel S is in a class of its own at 1260cc, also liquid cooled, but 160 horsepower, 0 to 60, an arm ripping 2.7 seconds. I own one of those bikes. This is a blast. So let me know what y'all think out there. What'd you think when you saw this new model announcement? Are you glad Harley came out with this bike? What, if anything, would you like to see them do differently? So please let me know in the comments section, and please stay tuned for future videos.